Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, as always, carrikerchronicles.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a 2-for-1 first time ever double interview on tap for you today. We're going to start it off the top with Emmett Johnson. And if you're like me and you enjoy watching Emmett play and appreciate his efforts, and smash that like button, the back half of this show is going to be a Husker Great, the man who made nearly 60 field goals during his Nebraska football career, Mr. Drew Brown. As always, subscribe if you haven't done so yet and ring that notification bell. But I want to bring Emmett on and light this candle. Emmett, how you doing, my friend?
Sir, I'm doing great. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing phenomenal, and I'm going to hit you right out the gate with a couple of fun questions. All right, man, last year you started the year as fourth string, and you shared with me something that a lot of people may not know right before we started recording. You actually only had one Power 5 offer coming out of high school, and it was Nebraska. But as the year progressed, unfortunately, guys in front of you get hurt, but you get the chance to start as a freshman, and you played well. What was that like for you, not being highly recruited, starting fourth string, and then midway through the season, you're the starting running back in Nebraska?
Yes, sir, man. It was great. I embraced all of it. I've dealt with a lot of adversity, even being recruited out of high school and things like that. But I think the biggest thing was preparation. I prepared myself every single day, whether that was in the weight room, on the field, the classroom, whatever it may be. I put myself in a position where, I felt like I was ready to play when my name was called. And I think that just comes from, my faith and just being a hard worker. But it was a great experience, and it was something that I was ready for and I was prepared for. And, I embraced all of it. And, yeah, that was a great experience. But I feel like there's a lot more to come.
Yeah, man. Now, as you entered this year, there's four talent. There's a lot of guys in that running back room. There's four guys who are very, very talented, of course, and trying the process of earning playtime, trying to earn playtime. There's been, games this year where you didn't get a ton of carries. And then this last game, you were tied with Dante Dowdell for the game high in carries. You each had 14. So what's it like when each game tends to vary and be up and down like that?
Yeah, just being ready for your opportunity. I never know when my name's going to be called. I never know when I'm going to have to go in there. So I just prepare myself. I prepare myself as a starter. I prepare myself to go in there and be explosive and make plays for this team to win. And so that's really what I, take it as, is just preparing myself, working extremely hard in practice, proving it every single day to myself. And then when my name gets called, just going out there and making plays. Because I know, there's been some games where I have to be the spark, for our offense. And so just staying ready and staying prepared, staying hungry.
What's it like in that running backs room? Because you're all competing for the same spot, the same job, the same play time. There's only so much of it. Obviously, there's going to be a natural competition, which can be healthy. But what's it like, the relationship between all of you guys in that room?
Yeah, we all get along really well. Ramir, I'm probably most closest to, but Ramir, Dante, Gabe, we all get along with each other really well. We all push each other every single practice. And, it's a lot of competition. I love it that way. I love, competing with people. I never want anything to be easy. So I love the fact that we have some other talented guys to compete with every single day. And that just gives me a chance to, show what I can do. And I think we have a different style of play with, Gabe and Dante being bigger backs, and Ramir and me being guys that can do both, catch the ball at the backfield, things like that. But it's great, man. I love it. A lot of competition, something that I just embrace, and I'm just excited that, we all get along really well, and we're all on the same mission. We're all trying to help this team win, make plays for us to win, so.
All right, now Nebraska's improved certainly in various areas this year, from taking care of the football to being able to throw the ball better. One thing that hasn't been quite the same as a year ago, when you guys averaged nearly 5 yards per carry this year. So far, halfway through the season, coming off a bye, averaging 3.9 yards per carry. What's been the difference so far in the run game from last year to the midpoint of this season?
I would say the difference is, last year we ran the ball well and things like that, but this year we, 3.9, like you just said, that's an area we got to really grow in, and I'm going to do my best to be explosive, because those are where the big plays for our team, to get momentum and everything switches. So being explosive, creating big runs, and I think that average will go up in no time. We got the guys that can do it. So it's just about going out there and doing it and making plays happen. It might not be the cutest play drawn up, but we can just go out there and execute and make the plays ourselves, and our average start to go up. So I just say the biggest difference is, just us being explosive this year compared to last year. We ran the ball a whole bunch, and they kind of knew we were going to run the ball. This year, it's like we got to, quarterback and throw, and it's just going to make our offense way more complete if we're able to run the ball explosively and, catch the ball and make big plays that way. So I think we'll be a tough team to beat once we make those plays.
All right, the goal going forward is obviously, as you mentioned, to try to get more explosive plays, more big plays, and obviously the average will clearly jump up. All right, man, talk to me about Indiana. This is a team, I'm not going to go through all the stats for the 8 billionth time on this show. I'll just simply say right now, statistically, they're a top 10 defense, but you've had a bye week. You guys have had stuff to work on. So what have you tried to focus on improving over the bye week, and what do you see from Indiana so far?
Yeah, I think the bye week was a chance to, get a head start on these guys. They're, a great team. They've put up a lot of points on offense, and, they got a good defense. And I think just this was a time to focus in more on, what we want to do and just focus on us. They're a great team, but if we make it about us and execute, play Nebraska football, we'll be just fine. And I'm really excited to go to their place and an undefeated team that's ranked. I love all those things. I think this is a chance for, like I just said, for us to be explosive and I'll make big plays happen. And so that's my mindset going into this game, is just to be explosive every touch, make the right plays, make the smart plays, be good in protection, and just, execute, and it'll be a great one.
All right, man. So anytime I'm deciding what type of question to ask, there's easier ones, there's difficult ones, there's things in between. And anytime I have a current player on, I always try to be a little nicer because I appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedule. That being said, I've got to ask, because Indiana has all these stats, but they're untested. Or 109th strength of schedule in the country. All right, and a lot of people would say, hey, Nebraska's toughest games are probably still ahead of them, in fairness. But what are your thoughts on them probably not having seen a team quite like Nebraska so far, just like you guys probably haven't seen a team quite like Indiana just yet?
Yeah, man, I love it. I love that because we bust our butts every single day in practice, and we hit each other. We're really physical, and I love playing a team, that's, not as physical, because I think when it comes third, fourth quarter, we're going to be a strong team, and it's going to be hard to stop us because of how much, we take pride in hitting, and it's something that I guess this culture is brung. And so I think I'm excited, man. I definitely think it's going to be a fun one. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but I think we'll be the more physical team, and I think when it's the fourth quarter, we'll be the strongest team standing.
All right, man. This is one of those more just pure fun type questions. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, who would you say is the funniest guy on the offensive side of the ball?
The funniest guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say Dylan for sure.
Okay.
Kind of just joke around a lot, and we're serious about our football, but on the offensive side of things, I'll say that's somebody who I got a great connection with, and is just somebody to chop it up all the time. Cracks jokes from here and there. The other day I was talking about his brother throwing the 60-yard pass in his high school game, which I seen, and I was just making jokes with him like, your brother got a stronger arm than you. Just little things like that we joke around with each other about. And so, yeah, I'll say Dylan. Yeah, funny dude, but no one's business on the field. So.
All right, man. Last question for you. Now, this is meant to be fun, but I know how skilled guys are. They're very sensitive when it comes to who the fastest guy is. So I asked Jamal Banks when he came on who the fastest receiver was, and it was between Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney. He ended up giving the nod to Jalen Lloyd. Yeah. All right, between you running backs, who's the fastest running back in that room?
I'm confident myself, so I'm going to say me, but I think it's between me and Ramir, for sure.
All right, so I got to ask this, because distance matters. So would you give yourself the edge in the shorter race, like 20 to 30 yards, or the longer race, like 70 to 80 yards?
If we're talking about, like, in-game, I think the longer distance is, like, better for me because, 70 to 80, like, if I break a run, I'm definitely going to be gone. But
yeah,
I'll say we both kind of have different types of speed, if it makes sense. Like, I think
Yep.
my lateral cuts and, like, Ramir has great straight line speed. And I think, I don't know, it'll be close. But either way, I'm still taking myself over
I like
anybody,
it.
but
I like it. That's awesome.
It'll be close for sure.
That's awesome, dude. And I appreciate you taking the time to join me. Good luck in Bloomington on Saturday. Real quick, before we go to that Drew Brown interview, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor. So shout out to DPS Concrete Construction. They are your experts when it comes to concrete retaining wall work. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, Allen Capital Group. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com. They are your next level solutions for next level need. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And I got a special guest with me again. He's one of the top kickers in Husker history. He started all 51 games of his career. He was only the fourth Nebraska football player to start 50 or more games. He made the second most amount of field goals during his career at Nebraska in Husker history, 59, just right behind Alex Henry. Ranks fourth in school history in points scored with 355. An all Big Ten performer his sophomore, junior, and senior seasons. Owned some records as well, including the freshman scoring record, sophomore record for field goals made in a season, 21 in 2015, and tied the Memorial Stadium record for field goals made in a game, 5, and field goals made in a half, which is an NCAA record, also 5. Mr. Drew Brown, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I appreciate you joining me. I didn't give you a heads up what we were going to talk about, but I'm willing to bet you can guess. All right, let's just start with the field goal kicking to begin with. And I'm going to come back to Tristan Alvano. At the time that we're recording this, we don't know his status for the Indiana game, but you look at a guy like John Hull, the Lincoln Southwest grad, and this was a guy that Matt Rule talked about. He said his 50-plus yard field goal makes that he was making during fall camp were one of the highlights of camp so far this season. A freshman, a young guy, okay? He's 1 of 5 on the season, made a 21-yard field goal. So talk to me, because you started as a freshman. What's it like being a young guy, all the talent in the world, but going out there and doing it in front of everybody? How challenging can that be?
Very challenging. I think, just like any other position on the field, you're always having to rely on your teammates to do their job in order for you to be successful. As a kicker specifically, you have the snap, you have the hold, you have the protection up front. And if some of that is off for whatever reason, that just makes your job that much harder. And as a guy like John, or I'm sure Tristan had these experiences last year, his freshman year, it's just, that much more to have to think about, especially during games when points are at a premium. So like I said, with Dylan Raiola, if he may have receivers that, may not be catching the ball, then Dylan's not as effective. If as a kicker, you don't have, the best snap, the best hold, the best protection, you can't be as effective. So being able to overcome those things in, a short amount of time in the middle of a play on the field can be challenging, no matter what your experience level is, but especially for a young guy, can be tough.
So I call it the order of operations. I'm not a math guy, but please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You start with the snap in this case, you got the hold, you got it's funny, it was the very next question I had for you. I literally wrote order of operations question mark was my note. You got the snap, you got the hold, you got the protection, then you got to make the kick. So if you're a kicker, obviously you're focused on kicking that ball. How hard is it to block out knowing that everything else is kind of up in the air right now for the Huskers? They have to get better at these things, but they haven't shown that they are yet.
Right. Yeah, it can be tough. I was very, very blessed to have outstanding long snappers and outstanding holders in my time at Nebraska, as well as the protection up front was second to none. But like you said, that if there's one step in that order of operations that's not clicking on all cylinders, it can make John or Tristan or whoever's kicking the ball that much tougher. I mean, you even look at Brian Buschini the last couple of games, the pump protection has been off, and that's, affected games extremely. I think Coach Rule said maybe last week it's almost impossible to win a game when you have 2 block punts, and somehow we did. But later as the season goes on, we're still battling to get that 6th win to get to that bowl game. You never know when a special teams play in the first quarter or the last play of the game is going to affect a win or a loss. So yeah, like you were saying, that the order of operations has to be there every single play, and you develop that throughout the summer, in fall camp, and then in practice every week.
So I interviewed Bill Bush, who's obviously been Nebraska's special teams coordinator twice in the past during his career, but he pointed out a stat that I've heard before. He said if you have a block punt in the game, the odds of you winning go way down.
down. Like if you block a punt in the game, there's a 90% chance you're going to win the game. Nebraska had 2. And like you said, they still found a way to win the game. Tristan Alvano is an interesting guy to me because his ability, his talent, his skill, whenever he's able to come back, and again, we don't know his status as we're recording this, it's through the roof. Like he's got NFL kicker written all over him physically one day. And then, in case people forgot, all right, he's a record-breaking kicker from Omaha West Side, set all class records for most field goals made in a game and in a season. And this was what stood out to me the most, because you need that clutch gene. Plus 5 field goals, including a 50-yarder and a 45-yarder as the time expired to win the state championship game. He's shown he's got the physical ability. He's got the clutch gene. So it just kind of hasn't clicked for him even last year when the order of operations was a little bit more consistent. And I know it's a little bit speculatory on your part, but when he comes back, I mean, how do you see him trying to get back into the fold? Because he's got the ability, he's got the clutch gene. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, speaking about Tristan, I've known Tristan for a long time now. My older brother, Chris, they live in Omaha, and their kids are in the West Side school system. Colby, his oldest son, my nephew, was Tristan's holder in high school for a few years. So,
okay.
So I've worked with Tristan before a little bit when he was still in high school. But yeah, like you said, extreme talent. Has as much of it as you can ever ask for. Had that state championship game in Memorial Stadium his senior year, where he pretty much won the game for the team for West Side. But coming back, I mean, from injury, it's and I'm sure you experienced it at some time in your career. It's so hard, especially a kicker with a hip, whatever. I'm not sure what the injury specifically is, but I think it's some sort of hip injury. He just has to be able to trust that, and once he can get back to that in practice and get the snap hold and kick down again where he's not feeling any pain, that's going to be the next benchmark for him. And again, we have no idea how he feels. He could play against Indiana. We've got no idea. But yeah, it's tough coming back from any injury, especially a leg related injury with a kicker. So like you said, one of the most talented kickers ever come through Nebraska. So we wish him the best in recovery, and hopefully he's able to come back as soon as he can.
I remember interim head coach Mickey Joseph offered him right after that game to come to Nebraska. That's how impressive that game was. All right, so kicking. I have to imagine because I have no clue. I have to imagine it's like golf. All right, it's a lot of it's mental. All right, and you've got the ability, you've got big legs, you've got all this, you've done it in the past. How much of kicking is mental? And then my very next question is, how much of it is technique? Again, almost kind of like golf or baseball to a degree.
Yeah, it's a good combination of both. From the physical side, obviously you just need the ability to kick a ball first, and then as you kind of get older, middle school, high school, college, you're refining your technique. But from the mental side, I mean, there's just so much of it that goes on throughout a game. When you're kicking at Memorial Stadium, one of the, if not the windiest stadiums in college football from what I've experienced. So you're having to deal with weather, you're having to deal with, temperature, especially when you get later on in the season with the cold. So you got to find ways to stay warm on the sideline, things like that. But to me, one of the most important things with kicking is if I'm a kicker, I miss a field goal, early in the game, I'm probably going to have another opportunity later in the game. How do I respond to that? And that shows your mental toughness. It's, again, similar to a quarterback. They throw a pick. What do they do their very next pass attempt? But with kicking, you have a fraction of the amount of attempts in a game than you do passing attempts. Or if a corner gets burned on a deep route, you have a fraction of the amount of attempts. So that bounce back ability, and you compare it to golf. If I make a bogey, what's my, how many holes am I making a par or birdie the next hole? Same thing with kicking. So the best ones, and you can tell by the guys in the NFL, the best ones, whenever they miss a kick, they're making the next one every single time, no matter what the situation is. And that's what separates the good ones from the great ones.
It's interesting because I'm going to add field goal kickers to this list now. I've always heard the 2 positions on a football team that has to have the shortest memory, and you mentioned them, are quarterback and cornerback. Now I'm going to add field goal kicker to that list. That's a great point right there. All right, so when you heard Brett Maher's on staff, and as we all know, Brett Maher is one of the best field goal kickers in the history of Nebraska football. Random side note, he actually was the punter his last 2 years and averaged 41.8 yards per for punt as well. So he did both. But when you hear a guy like that is on staff and he's been there for a while, for a few months now, what was your reaction when you heard that? How big of an impact can he make?
Yeah, I'll actually give you another nugget. He was Alex Henry's holder for 1 year as well.
All right.
So just for your records.
There you go.
No, Brett, I've known Brett for probably since I was in high school. Having a guy on staff like that can relate to what it's like being a kicker in college at Nebraska is vital. I mean, he did it himself coming from Central Nebraska, playing at the University of Nebraska, and just having that expertise on staff. Coach Foley and his group, they have kickoff return, punt return to deal with. So to have a guy that is kicking and punting specifically, that type of knowledge, it's invaluable in my opinion. And I'm sure they're doing everything they can to help out those guys on the team.
And he can help with the holders as well, as you pointed out. That's a big thing. You've spent a lot of time in special teams meetings over the years. So I got to ask you, our punt returns, we're averaging 5 yards a punt return, not great. Our coverage units haven't been like a gigantic problem, but they're not consistent. I don't entirely trust them. How do we get better, in your opinion, from what you see as far as, and kickoff returns, they're not what they once were because they've changed the rules so much. But as far as our punt return and our coverage units and punt protection, honestly, how do we get better at those things as a whole, in your opinion?
From a punt return standpoint, I was lucky enough to have one of the best punt returners in Nebraska football history, DeMaurier Pearsonell, to play with. And it seemed like his, when he was healthy his first few years, he was returning a punt for, a touchdown every other game. And then from a punt standpoint, from the protection, it's just, like you said, those kinds of plays can completely change games. And we had the game against Rutgers, Brian had the fake punt, and then we stopped the fake field goal. So those kind of canceled out a little bit. But there's so much to being a great punt returner and being a great punt coverage unit, as you know. I mean, it takes an entire team or an entire group of 11 guys. One penalty can completely ruin that. A punt returner can't be at the best that they can be without guys in front of them blocking. And you got to continue to protect up front and cover downfield.
I think you make a great point. It's about the unit, the special teams unit. The guys blocking create the holes for the returner. And if you got one hole as a coverage unit, I've been in on enough special teams meetings, and I understand defense enough to know if one guy's out of his lane, that's like having a gigantic hole on a power play on 1st and 10, and it's going to be a problem. Just got to be more consistent as a unit. All right, Drew, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. We've had a bye week. Hopefully there's been some improvements made in the special teams as a whole. As always, ladies and gentlemen, you can check out CarrikerChronicles.com. It's just where all your Husker sports hopes and dreams will come true. It's just science. All right, I got some questions for you fine folks at home. Let me know your answers in the comments below. And I'm not going to lie, I felt a little funny writing these down, but this is what popped into my head when I went down to write 3 questions. Number 1, do you still believe Tristan Alvano can be a great kicker? My answer is yes. Again, I felt funny, but this is what popped into my head. John Holt, how long do you think it can take before he can reach his potential? Because he's got a big leg, a lot of talent, young kicker as well. And number 3, special teams. Do you think the Huskers can just be average the second half of the season on special teams? Because that would be a gigantic leap up. And until next time, Husker Nation, thanks again to Drew. Go Big Red, and always remember to throw the ball.